Hello, and welcome to the new video. Today we will cover the Righteous Fire Juggernaut build guide. Righteous Fire is one of the most iconic skills in Path of Exile. It is one of the first walking simulator builds ever created, and to this day it delivers exactly that. You can simply walk around enemies and watch them burn from your mere presence. When you activate Righteous Fire, it starts to deal fire damage to you and all enemies around you. In order to sustain that, you will need lots of life regeneration and ways to reduce the fire damage taken, which is usually done by raising your fire resistances above the default 75%. In that process, you will naturally become very tanky against other damage types as well. Unfortunately, the damage potential of the Righteous Fire is rather low. It is great at killing packs of weaker enemies, but it needs some help against single enemies. The Fire Trap is a skill that scales very similar but also has a hit component, which can inflict an ignite for even more damage. Be warned that even with the combination of those two skills, your damage will be quite low. It can kill bosses very easily, it just takes longer time than some other builds with a similar budget. In return, you will be very tanky and can make mistakes the other builds couldn't afford to do. The Righteous Fire deals burning damage in a circle around you. It doesn't hit, so you can't benefit from leech or fire penetration. It might be counterintuitive, but it isn't treated as spell damage or ailment, so it isn't that easy to improve its damage. It is an extremely tanky build with tons of life regeneration, armor rating, and endurance charges. The Juggernaut Ascendancy will further boost the usefulness of your armor and endurance charges against elemental damage. The clear speed is very smooth and pretty fast. It excels at tight maps with high-density packs. Single target is rather weak, but you make up for that by not having to dodge or run away from dangerous attacks. It is a great league starter as it requires virtually no gear to function, but getting high-end upgrades might be expensive. The build doesn't use any particular build enabling unique, but there are a few options worth considering using over the regular rares. Unique shields are especially useful when you just started your journey with Righteous Fire. Rise of the Phoenix is a great starting shield that grants you tons of maximum fire resistances and regeneration. It doesn't offer any maximum life or damage, so you shouldn't use it for too long. Sapphal's Frame grants more universal defense, as it raises all elemental resistances, not just the fire ones. It also grants a bit of spell damage and spell block chance but disables your regular blocks. Legacy of Fury are an extremely useful pair of boots that improve your clear speed and single target damage. Scorch reduces all elemental resistances and can be improved via the effect of non-damaging elemental ailments on your remaining gear. The Brass Dome is the ultimate defensive armor. Maximum resistances and extreme amounts of armor are very strong on their own, but it also disables the extra damage from enemy critical strikes. The loss of maximum life is a big downside, but not big enough to not use this armor. There is only one modifier available on the Watcher's Eye that would boost your damage, and it is quite expensive. Defensive modifiers are also useful and should be much easier to acquire. Brutal Restraint always grants plenty of dexterity and has the possibility to grant some useful modifiers on nearby notables that you have picked anyway. You can inspect specific jewels with the Path of Building before you buy one. The damage is scaled mostly by getting fire damage over time multiplier and increased fire or elemental damage modifiers. Additional levels for your fire spells are also very important, as they will greatly improve their base damage. Rising your maximum life and life regeneration will greatly improve your sustain. Sources of maximum fire resistances are also very important as they will reduce the damage you take from your RF. You will need an Elder-influenced helmet crafted with the Essence of Horror. It should grant one additional support gem, effectively serving as a 6-link setup for your Righteous Fire. On top of that, look for maximum life, resistances, or empty prefix so you can craft additional level for your Righteous Fire. You should look for levels for your fire gems, damage over time multiplier, and sources of increased damage for burning damage. Preferably it should be done on Scepter, which grants 40% increased elemental damage from its implicit. Ultimately you will want to use a rare shield with modifiers to your fire gem levels and maximum resistances. It should also grant you a bit of maximum life and resistances. You can use rare armor which has high amounts of maximum life, resistances, and life regeneration. You can also get mana reservation efficiency and aura effect, but you shouldn't spend too much here as you should upgrade it to unique armor at some point. At first you can use rare boots with bonuses to maximum life, movement speed, and resistances. They also can grant you the chance to avoid ailments or life regeneration. On your rare gloves you can get a very important modifier that improves all your regeneration rates. Other than that, look for usual life and resistances. Eldritch influenced implicits like fire exposure or fire damage over time multiplier are also very useful. Your rare belt is simple yet powerful. You should stack a lot of maximum life and resistances here. You can also look for Hunter's percentage maximum life or life regeneration. It is also possible to get trap throwing speed here, which will make your gameplay smoother. If you have a Stygian Vice belt, you can use an additional Abyss Jewel to get some bonus maximum resistances, maximum life, or attributes. You can also get immunity to corrupting blood or elemental avoidances. Ideally you should use a Vermilion ring with maximum life modifiers and use Fertile Catalyst to boost them significantly. If you still lack them, get resistances and attributes here, otherwise, you can use the Essence of Delirium to get damage over time multiplier. Minimum frenzy charges are also an affordable way to get some damage on a defensive focused ring. A good rare amulet is very impactful on your damage. Here you should look for additional levels for your fire gems and damage over time multiplier. Try to also get a bit of maximum life, resistances, or attributes here. On your jewels you should get maximum life, lacking resistances or attributes, and some minor bonuses to your burning damage. Thanks to the spiritual aid notable on your passive tree you can also use modifiers to minion damage. Bottled Faith creates a consecrated ground with a vastly increased area of effect, which applies increased damage taken modifier to enemies standing in it. It is an optional flask used to boost your single target damage. For your remaining magic flask we recommend using Life Flask with bleeding removal, Quartz Flask with additional attack speed bonus, Quicksilver Flask with curse effect reduction, and a Granite Flask with armor rating bonus. Righteous Fire is a spell that engulfs you in fire, which deals damage to you and all nearby enemies. Doing so will also massively increase the spell damage of your other abilities. There are only a few support gems that work with Righteous Fire, so there is no reason to use this spell in 6 Link. The Swift Affliction support normally wouldn't work here, but we also use the Life Tap support, which adds the duration tag to this setup. Fire Trap throws a trap that explodes upon activation, dealing high fire damage and leaving burning ground for a short duration. It is the best supplementary skill as it simply has the highest damage numbers. The Empower greatly increases its damage, but if you don't have access to it you can alternatively use Controlled Destruction support instead, or less duration support if you don't want to bother with recoloring your armor later. Scaling your armor is very important, and Determination is the best aura to do so. It will grant you a lot of base armor rating and improve all your armor from your gear. Malevolence is your major offensive aura as it improves all damage over time you deal and increases the duration of your effects. Tempest Shield gives you lots of spell block chance and makes you immune to shock. You can also use the Arctic Armor which grants immunity to freeze and increases your physical resistance when stationary. As the name suggests, you summon a pair of skitterbots that inflict shock and chill on nearby enemies. It also increases the damage of your fire trap. Thanks to the Life Tap support in all your main links you can freely reserve almost 100% of your mana, so you don't need the Enlightened support for this setup. Vitality Aura is very important early on, as it grants you tons of life regeneration. It reserves a flat amount of mana instead of the usual percentage. Arrogance support causes linked auras to reserve life instead of mana. That way you can freely level up your vitality to level 20 and make use of new aura mastery which grants you maximum resistances if you have both mana and life reserve. Shield Charge causes you to quickly charge towards the targeted location. It is your main movement skill, but it can't go through the terrain gaps. Shield charge scales very well with your attack speed, so the faster attacks and life tap are necessary supports to make this setup smooth to play. Frost Blink is your secondary travel skill used to cross terrain gaps and slightly improve your overall speed when combined with shield charge. Molten Shell forms a protective barrier that grants you armor and absorbs incoming damage. You can also use the Immortal Call, but you will have to generate all your endurance charges again after every use. Flammability lowers the fire resistance of the affected enemy. Casting it manually has the best effectiveness, as the curse on hit modifiers uses the level 1 version of this skill. Elemental Weakness lowers enemy fire resistances slightly less than the previous curse. You will need sources of additional curses to use them together. Infernal Cry covers nearby enemies in ash, increasing the fire damage they take from you. It also makes them explode upon death. You can also use the Enduring Cry if you prefer powerful healing over the damage boost. The Bandits offers are pretty bad for this build, so it is best to kill all of them and get rewarded with 2 bonus passive skill points by Aramir. For your major Pantheon power we recommend the Soul of Era Kali, which reduced the damage over time you take and grants you tons of chaos resistances. As for your minor Pantheon power you can pick up the Soul of Tukahama, which further reinforces the face tanking gameplay. You can also use the Soul of Ralakesh, as the bleeding effect are still pretty dangerous. Leveling with this build is pretty slow. You can actually start using Righteous Fire quite early on, but it won't be too effective at first. You will need lots of life regeneration and capped fire resistances to sustain it. Forcing it too early will slow you down drastically. New recovery notables and fire mastery that grants you life regeneration make it much easier to achieve. There are a few spells you can use to supplement your damage, such as Rolling Magma or Armageddon Brand, but the Fire Trap remains the best as it simply has the most damage out of them all. At first, you will struggle with dexterity and intelligence requirements, so try to keep eye on items with such modifiers. Your passive tree will grant you tons of life regeneration and maximum resistances. Thanks to the spiritual aid notable you can use minion modifiers, making it much easier to scale damage. Aura and mana clusters are necessary to use all of your auras. Elemental Overload grants only a minor damage improvement to the ignite caused by the fire trap, but since it is very close it is worth picking up anyway. Maximum endurance charges provide powerful defensive value through physical damage reduction and life regeneration. Thanks to Juggernaut Ascendancy you will easily generate them while in combat. The Brutal Restraint Jewel can be used at level 20, so it is a great way to deal with dexterity requirements during the campaign. That's everything for today's video. We hope you enjoyed it. If so, please leave a like or subscribe, and see you in the next one.